Deputy Presiding Officer. Today's debate is about a PBR that added £23 million extra and removed nothing from the Scottish Government's budget of over £30,000 million for next year. So we are now debating a pre-budget report that changes less than 0.01% of what the SNP have known for 9 months they would have to spend next year. But predictably, the SNP see it as the chance for a good gun, another chance to have a go at Westminster, but have offered little in the way of serious economic analysis. And of course the main gun, which we now get in almost every debate, is for the SNP to blame their own policy failures on the alleged tight-fistedness of London Labour. I simply say to the SNP, did you make any one of your manifesto promises contingent on a particular budget settlement? In my recollection, you certainly did not. The truth is that the SNP didn't even have an inkling of how much cash would be available until the end of 2007 and the CSR. So all the eye-catching promises that they are now dumping, whether it be cancelling student debt, first-time buyer grants, class sizes of 18, free school meals, maintaining the Glasgow Airport rail link, every single one of those promises were made without any idea of the resources that would be available to them. And the truth is that in this 4-year term of office, where you promised to deliver these things, you have had cash growth in every single one of those years, even in your own terms, real terms growth in 3 of the 4 years, and next year the highest budget ever. So either you have no intention of keeping the promises, or you simply lack the political will to prioritise them. Now, the second gun from the SNP is to use the Scottish Government's DEL budget to assess whether there is a fiscal stimulus underway in Scotland as a whole. What we do know is that DEL accounts for little over half the total public spending attributable to Scotland. And yet, across the globe, in response to recession, governments are changing the balance of spending. Unemployment benefit is going up. Pensions are going to rise above inflation next year. Child benefit growing in real terms. All that is money into the pocket of Scots. But most importantly, government debt interest payments are rapidly growing to help finance the £850,000 million, £850,000 million that the National Audit Office tells us has been offered in guarantees to support British banks, a majority of that sum going to Scottish-based banks. So let's just think about what is the best way to support the Scottish economy through the current economic crisis. I do recall that the SNP simply wanted depositor protection. They didn't call for bank recapitalisation, emergency liquidity funds, underwriting of the participation in the wholesale markets, an asset protection scheme, and the whole myriad of techniques that have contributed to that £850,000 million and have kept those institutions open. Scotland's banks, RBS, HBOS and Lloyds, October last year, £37,000 million, more than the entire Scottish Government's budget, £60,000 million in emergency loans last winter, and last month the UK Government promising to buy another £37,000 million in RBS and Lloyds' share if required, again a sum larger than the entire Scottish Government budget, simply to ensure that these institutions could continue operations, not a minor depositor protection scheme, which was, of course, the prescription from the Scottish Government. So I simply say to you, whatever side of that debate you stand on, why are we having a debate about £23 million extra, having never once had a debate about £850,000 million safety net? And the answer, of course, is it's about the gun potential, not about its importance or relevance to the Scottish economy. Because back in the real world, that £850,000 million guarantee is the stimulus that has saved the Scottish economy from the fate of Iceland and Ireland. And before the SNP start bleating about Norway, as the First Minister did at question time last week, perhaps the Cabinet Secretary would acknowledge that that is not 17.5%, but 25%. Food is not exempt, as in this country, but levied at 14%. Transport subject to VAT at 8% and basic rate income tax at 28%. And that's in a country where the value of oil revenues in terms of tax significantly exceed what they would in any potential Scottish scenario. So I suggest we say to the shoppers on Princes Street just now who are trying to make ends meet and who are simply relieved that their cash machines are still operating, let us try and explain to them why we are having a debate about 0.01% of the Scottish budget. And of course the answer is because the big picture doesn't suit the SNP. So they simply want to try and ignore it. So I challenge the SNP, commission your own Chief Economic Adviser to examine the economic impact of that stimulus of £850,000 million worth of guarantees and its impact on supporting the Scottish economy in the last year. It is simply not credible to hope if you ignore that figure it will go away, and to have carried out no analysis of any kind whatsoever does a disservice to this Parliament. I also say to you what does a disservice to this Parliament is that more than 2 years after publishing your own government economic strategy, in 2 years of economic crisis, you have not once had the courage to come back here and debate it again. Yes, it would be embarrassing that the Ark of Prosperity eulogy therein has fallen to bits, but there is a case for dealing with the real world and bringing it back and debating it here sometime in the new year. We look forward to it.